So how is everybody today then? Stuart, what's going on in the States of late? Anything interesting?
But in terms of crypto, we've got nothing really happening.
Mhm.
The one thing that concerns me, though, is the digital ID. And the question is, are blockchains feeding that?
Mhm. Well, logically, a, a, a blockchain-based environment with digital ID integrated as part of it is almost like a kind of like a technology nirvana.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, yeah.
it's it's unfortunately, however, well, what I've noticed is that more and more with technology, that the capabilities are getting more and more impressive, and everyone's going, "Wow, this is incredible." From a technology point of view, it's great, but we're getting more and more worried about how governments might use it, and that seems to be the problem. So we're hitting this
And who
whole,
might hack it as well?
yeah, yeah, it's very true, and it's the either bad actors coming in and, as you say, stealing it, manipulating it, modifying it, taking control of your identity, um, or those bad actors being state level. Uh, and whether it's your own state or someone else's state, it seems people are worried just generally about that thing. So yeah, it's an interesting one, and it's
So
fascinating as
should we
well.
should we ban blockchains?
What you think blockchains are a threat to society?
Well, they are because they support the rollout of the digital ID.
Mm.
Uh, you can't really do it. I mean, yes, you can use a distributed database, and I'm sure JT would have a lot to say about that. But blockchain is going to accelerate the rollout of the real ID or
It's
digital
interesting
ID.
though that, yeah, because the capability is certainly there. But I find that whenever I start talking about digital identity and blockchains and real world asset tracking and all this kind of stuff, everyone always starts talking about Estonia as being like kind of like the poster child of having citizen identity on the blockchain. But my
Hmm.
understanding of the implementation of Estonia's e-registry scheme is that it's blockchain inspired, but not blockchain based. So that they
Mm.
did a lot of work with a very interesting company, the name of which escapes me offhand, Guard Time, I think it is, who I met the CEO, and they're a very interesting organization.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's kind of interesting because when you hear about how it was all implemented, it's not actually a blockchain that backs it, but it's generally considered to be blockchain inspired or whatever. But yeah, you're right. It could be a capability. It's a little bit like how I've explained to people that this often happens with technology. You think of a completely different technology, aeroplanes. Aeroplanes have evolved and transformed, and as a capability, have enabled us to travel thousands of miles or carry good thousands of miles, 100 miles an hour, or drop bombs. So, they can be used for good and bad. And it's the same with technology and same with blockchain and decentralized systems as well.
Do you
So
think the current versions of blockchain are just about finished technologically?
I think they don't seem to be evolving sufficiently. You
They
know,
can't.
no, they seem to have hit this kind of like plateau of innovation, and they seem to be just doing more of the same. The one thing I have noticed on the cryptocurrency side, I was taking a look at this earlier. I'll just share a graph I was looking at about cryptocurrencies and crypto tokens. And what I found interesting is you take a look at the evolution of cryptocurrencies, which are actually tokens based on other chains.
Yes.
And you look at originally Ethereum, 98% of all crypto tokens were Ethereum based. Um, and then Solana came about and oh, sorry, not Solana, BSC came about and that started coming into some things and then Solana and then others. But if you take a look
Mm.
now, the situation now is that Ethereum actually makes up a very small percent of
Mm.
the crypto tokens that are around. And a lot of it now is, Solana's about 2/3 of everything, and BSC is about 10%. That's the only kind of innovation as such I've seen with
But
blockchain for
is
that
it innovation?
tokenized. Go
Is it
ahead.
innovation? Is it really innovation?
Well, not greatly. So it comes down to what your
But
definition of innovation is. That
have you
I
looked at trades though? They're just washing. They're wash
Yeah,
trade.
yeah, and that used to be the
New
case.
business still got the 3% penetration, and it's stayed the same for years.
Yeah, and it's something as well that I once came up with a definition of innovation of it's doing things differently with different things, or it's using the same things in a different way to achieve a different end game. And we don't seem to be getting any true doing things differently anymore. If you take a look at like things like real world asset tokenization, well, great. So you've got an asset and you stick it on a blockchain, you tokenize it.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no true innovation. There's variations on smart contracts. There's innovation on coding capabilities. And you look at Ethereum, you've still got different ERC proposals coming through, or ERPs or whatever, but nothing truly different. Whereas you think about artificial intelligence, which is the thing of interest these days. You take a look at what's happened with that in the last probably 3 to 4 years, where all of a sudden large language models appeared. Then ChatGPT kind of exploded on the scene with generative AI. Then you've got agentic AI, and each of these evolutions are quite radical and disruptive in their own right, and are very different. Whereas with blockchains, it's like it's a decentralized system, and there's not much difference. I don't know what's your thinking.
I think technologically the blockchains have wrapped themselves into a corner, and without a total architectural rethink, they can't get out. There's no composability on any of the chains,
Yeah.
none
Uh,
whatsoever.
yeah, and the only other thing I've seen is continued growth of bridging type capabilities
Yeah,
of
that's right.
plugging them together.
But
Yeah.
then it's not decentralized because most of the level twos are not decentralized. So there's never been a killer app. They've
Yes.
never
Yeah.
solved a problem.
Yeah.
And that's it. You can transfer money or something from here to there somewhat anonymously, although most governments have your wallets,
Yeah. Yeah.
details of your wallets. What about you, Elena? What's your thoughts?
I'm not sure if I know enough to have my own opinion, but um, yeah, could I ask a question and then another one?
Well, you've
uh,
already asked the question.
in what I'm sitting here and wondering, in what bad ways can a government or anyone else use a digital identity on top
Oh,
of, I think everything has been done and used before with non-digital identities, isn't it?
right. With,
Is there,
for
yeah, is there
example, an
anything?
example. In China, they have facial recognition, they have body recognition, and out of that, they're able to identify people. They identify people, make sure that they've got a work permit, make sure they're living in the right city, right address. Are they wanted for anything? Have they committed any, minor or major crimes? And then they're given a social score. The social score then allows them to or controls whether or not they can travel outside of their village, town, or city, and where they can go to, how much money they can take with them. And it's also a way of they're starting to collect financial information about the people. So ultimately, the goal is the government knows best whether you should be eating something, drinking something, traveling something. And this is where the 15-minute cities come from. is that you should not be able to go out of your range of 15 minutes because everything is provided for you. And they've started to do this in Oxford. I don't know if you're aware of that.
They certainly tried some experiments on that, and things like reducing speed limits, then zoning for cars and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe come back to Elena's point. I think there's two main areas around digital identity. The one is, first of all, it provides a capability for far greater surveillance to take place. So the very fact that at the moment it's actually quite difficult to link together a citizen's identity in terms of a passport or a national ID scheme and their bank accounts and various other things. You can do it, but it's surprisingly easy. You think about how many people have got similar names and how often countries have tried to introduce identity schemes. So in India, there's the Aadhaar project where they've got, I think it's over 1 billion people now on an identity system. And the challenge with that is if your identity is stolen, then that means that people have then got access to your, whether it's your bank or ability to spend things. So that's kind of one aspect. And then the other aspect, because I see it all the time, people say, well, you've got a passport already, you've got a form of national identity, what's the problem with it? Well, all a passport can prevent me from doing is leaving or entering the country. And that's it. But if you've got a digital passport, which is integrated with everything else, that then comes into, as Stuart mentions, things like the potential to introduce like the Chinese SRI project, social responsibility index, as it's called, which means that your behaviors and traits can control what you have access to. So, if you've done something really radical, like in the UK, you've posted an offensive tweet in some way that you've said something offensive, that might give you a social ranking, which then means that your access to education or the ability to buy some goods might be limited in some way. And it's interesting because it's very much conspiracy theory ground that is being backed by what's actually happening. So I don't know, do you have Oatly, the oat milk product in Ireland? Okay, so take a look at the bottom. I actually went into a supermarket and checked this the other day. At the bottom of Oatly's products now is a carbon rating. So it actually says how many units of carbon this container of oat milk has. So you can see the prospect there of,
They started that in the US as well.
Yeah, let's link in your carbon profile to say, well, actually, Gary, you've traveled too much this month, and so you can't now take a flight, or you can't have any more red meat because we've decided for you that it's unhealthy, which for me doesn't matter, but for other people it might do. So it's the potential of a benevolent government becoming malevolent, and it's that fear factor, and it's probably not helped by organizations like the World Economic Forum openly promoting ideas that, again, from a technology point of view, sound fantastic, but from a practitioner societal freedom of choice perspective are quite horrific. Does that answer in some way the question?
It does, and it makes sense.
Mm.
But what for an average law-abiding citizen?
So there's always the argument that if you're not breaking the law, what's the problem?
Yes, that's my argument.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things on that. First of all, citizens should have the right of privacy. governments should not have the right to know everything I'm doing. And it might be you're not doing anything illegal, but you don't want the government to know about it. The obvious one being, if you have curtains in your house, do you close the curtains in your bedroom? Now, you're probably not doing anything illegal, but you still want privacy, okay? And you've got a right to privacy.
Yeah.
There's certainly that. The other thing is that what is legal at the moment may be made illegal by a government in the future. And there you've got a double whammy, because it might then be that something that used to be okay and now isn't, and so you can't do it anymore. That's quite bad. And in the UK at the moment, you can't be prosecuted for something that you've done in the past that is now illegal. Okay, so if they introduce a new law that says, you know, whatever, you can't be prosecuted for effectively having broken that law when it didn't exist. Okay, but if you've got all the data now and you're recording the data of what people do, what people say, and that kind of thing, so it might currently be legal to tweet about a politician. Well, tomorrow they could introduce a new law that says it's no longer legal to make free and open comments about politicians. So as a citizen, you're suddenly tracked on the fact that you once made a comment in some way. And that's the thing that people worry about, I think. That's a couple of thoughts about it. So even though it's legal now, it doesn't mean it'll be legal in the future.
Right.
And it's the very fact that gives those controls. And you've even got things, there was the example in Canada a few years ago with the Canadian truckers, where Canadian truckers, I think it was during the lockdowns, so it must have been 2020, created a blockade in protest. And it's entirely legal for them to have a protest. But the banks were told to freeze their bank accounts for not doing anything illegal. So when you suddenly prevent access to money, that's quite a powerful thing. And if it's all digital identity controlled, all this stuff's a lot easier to do. So we've got JT on board.
And it's Central Bank Digital Currency that gives them the ultimate control.
Yeah, and that's the real kind of killer app kind of thing. That if all of a sudden you can link people's bank accounts to their identity and have it centrally controlled, then that really is the utopian Chinese dream of total control. And again, you may not be breaking the law, and so you could argue, well, there's nothing wrong with that, but you're then permanently under surveillance, which changes your behaviors anyway. And it means that you can kind of like nudge behavior. So you can encourage people to not do things. So I think one of the examples in use in China is the potential for your social ranking index to be affected by who you're associating with. So it may be that Stuart, JT, and I are already on the list of people that the government distrusts. And if they hear that Elena's been on a call, and exactly the way her colour just changed then, you know,
I don't know why it happened. I don't know why it happened.
But that was it.
That's right. That's the Chinese again.
That's exactly it. That, you know, the red light comes on, Elena gets a red mark, and all of a sudden Elena's not allowed to access her bank account for 48 hours because she's socialising with people who are on a blacklist in some way. How was that for timing? So, JT, you're just watching and listening there. We're talking about digital identity and blockchain.
I got it. Yeah. The problem is not actually the ID, you know. Problem is how it's used. I give you many countries that have very good implementations. Portugal, for example, people have for 45 years already an ID card. Yeah. And what the government has done, then they consolidated all the services. Social security, the passport, whatever. You always need, for everything, you need the ID card. And that saves an enormous amount of money, paperwork, you know, you name it, yeah? And then they set up a citizens shop, that's what they call it, where it has all of these services that our government provides. The only thing you need to know is to come with your ID card, and they know everything about you.
Yeah,
So
Greece has
it's
got
pretty,
that.
it's pretty good. It's really good. But you need to put it in law what you can and what you can't do. If you don't do that, then yeah, it's going to get abused. We're saying, potentially could be abused by governments to do many other different things, social scoring. I was watching a video for somebody that managed to get that out of China, or where you see people sleeping on the street now because their social score is so bad, so low. Yeah, and there's plenty of examples, man. And people end up actually living on the street, which is very bad. And then they get picked up and they actually disappear. Nobody knows where they're going. It's a massive problem. I'm not saying, I know what's your view, Stuart, about China. I'm not going to discuss that. There's no point in doing that. What I'm saying is, if used in a very bad way, it can have very bad consequences for people. That's all I'm saying. So that's, I don't think it's a bad thing as long as it's prescriptive to what a government can do or not with it. Yeah.
You do carry the risk. It comes back again that if bad people get hold of these capabilities, then they could do things. So criminals and that kind of thing is one example. And government databases are typically notorious as being good hacking opportunities. And there was one in the UK, I think a few weeks ago, of one of the government's digital access points or whatever was breached in some way. And it's when you start linking it in that, it's bad enough if it potentially gives a bad actor access to useful links and that. You then get things like in the UK, there's a scheme that not many people know about called NDAS, which is the National Data Analytics System. And it's actually sponsored by one of the UK police forces. And it's to integrate multiple government databases together. And again, a digital identity is brilliant for that because it means all of a sudden an offenders list of people leaving prison plus a Facebook profile plus your bank account plus CCTV and image recognition. If you glue all that together, what it allows the police to do in a very positive way is identify people who may be mixing with others who are known felons or whatever. And so you can keep an eye on them. And so that sounds really good for a moment because like the police are looking out for the fact that you're suddenly socializing with people you may not realize are drug dealers or whatever, and you may end up in a bad way. But I asked a question a while ago about one of the prospective areas that they could use that. And that's that they were looking at linking it with social care. And so you suddenly have this thing that potentially they could proactively send in social services if you're a mother of a young child and they've discovered that on Facebook you've recently friended a couple of people who are known for drug dealing or something. Which means even though you're not doing anything illegal, you suddenly are at risk of having your child taken away because they've identified that there's a potential risk. Now, that can be good and bad. From a societal point of view, that means that the government could be protecting young children from threats and risks, and that's great. But it also means that from a mother's perspective, she carries the risk that she might inadvertently friend someone, meet up with someone or whatever, and all of a sudden she's red flagged by social services. That's quite scary if it's not handled right. So it's the potential of these things. And we are theorizing with some of these, but they are very close to what's actually going on. So in Manchester, I think it is now, I was reading that they're scaling out facial recognition more and more, and they're using that increasingly. And they say that what they do is that they've got effectively a database of people of interest, and they've got cameras scanning like football matches, protests, or whatever, so that they can use that to identify if there's people that they want to speak to in some way, and the police can then use that to come out. And they claim that all of the data that they're collecting while they're doing the scanning is immediately deleted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Immediate is kind of an interesting concept, of how immediate, is it within minutes, within days, within months, within years? I don't know. Immediacy is one of those terms that gets discussed in court, and lawyers make lots of money out of it. So there you go. There's a few thoughts on it. And it comes back again that, as Stuart was alluding to, central bank digital currencies provide a really good opportunity for you to then link in digital identity schemes, social indexes, behavioral type things, and the ability to control who can spend money, where, when, how, and switch your money off as well. This was a thing in Parliament. I was at an all-party parliamentary group meeting after having been at a Bank of England event where they'd been talking about exploring central bank digital currency and using, as they described it, features of blockchains. So they were talking about things like smart contracts and that, and how that gives them the ability to potentially switch access off to funds or control where the funds are spent and that kind of thing. And I raised that as a point in a parliamentary event that evening with some of the MPs about how would they ensure that that kind of thing isn't used against individuals. Because it's quite scary if you think you've got money in the bank and suddenly you don't have access to it. And there was actually a pilot in 2017, I think it was, in the north of England, where they did it was not blockchain based, but it was a digital access thing where they were giving the equivalent of employment benefits. So some sort of social services monies or whatever, but they issued them as tokens. And they had the ability with these tokens to limit when they could be used and where they could be used. And again, that's got some really good conceptual things about it. So if you give somebody money for them to stay somewhere overnight because they're homeless, and you can limit it so that they can only use it to stay in accommodation overnight, and they can't go and spend it on drink or smoking or whatever. From a societal point of view, that sounds really attractive.
At the first level.
Yeah.
Because then the criminal enterprise comes in and you then have the ability to swap it for drugs, sex, whatever you want.
Yeah.
So,
and then again, this actually got into Parliament because it was really fascinating. I gave a talk on this at a conference in London, and that day, the rest of Parliament kind of heard about this project and were in furious uproar. Because all of a sudden, when you're controlling the freedom of what people decide to do with things like that, from a taxpayer's point of view, sounds great. Stop people misusing the money they're given. From a freedom of choice point of view, it fell apart. And so they discontinued the project. So, yeah. Again, so some of these things sound like really good ideas. And they're all on a spectrum. So some of them are potentially great, but could be misused. And they could be misused either by criminal enterprises who figure out how to exploit them. And as Stuart says, there's always ways of bartering this legal thing for this illegal thing. There's always ways around it. And then even worse, when you distrust your own government in the future, because we all trust our governments currently. I'm just saying that because we are on YouTube. This is being recorded. And I don't want to visit in the middle of the night.
I don't like your hurty words.
Well, there is that risk, and that's why it's interesting how you've got freedom of expression, which isn't that free at times, potentially, Your Honour. So, yeah. So, Elena, it comes back to, I think, the Chinese proverb of "May you live in interesting times" is true for all of us right now.
Yeah.
So, Elena,
I have nothing to add. Just yep.
well, you said you couldn't answer the question that I asked until you knew more. We've given you more information. So, what's the answer?
Okay. I would still think that for an average person, this would make very, very little difference. For the majority of people who just live their quiet lives, you know, work and family and stuff. For a small percentage of criminals, it will make life very difficult.
I think it'll make it
well, it will make just difficult, and for a fraction of population who would be cut off their bank account by mistake, or who would be denied a flight because of their carbon outprint, this would be very unfair.
But you would accept it.
It all depends on how it's used, you know. Yeah. So, I think it's a digital ID or any form of ID in a country, like I said before. I think it's really a good idea to consolidate a lot of things that the government provides to its citizens. Yeah.
We already have. You already have it in the UK. It's called national insurance number. You've got medical numbers. You've got driving license numbers.
Yeah, plenty around. So we just need one. Yeah. And that's what a lot of countries have been doing. You know, Portugal has that for 40, 45 years. You know, you are born. Yeah, I think it's at 12 or 13 you get a digital ID. Yeah. And from then onwards, that's what, not a digital ID, ID card. Yeah. From then onwards, even if you want a passport, you need to present your ID card. You can't get your passport if you don't have that. I think it's a brilliant idea, and everybody benefits from it. Yeah, not just some people. You know? The problem is when you don't have clearly identified what the government can do with that or not. Yes, and that's the problem. It needs to be passed a law. Okay, fine, but it's prescriptive to X, Y, and Z. Nothing else. Yeah, it's the same like with. I mean, if you start to touch CDBCs and all of that, then yeah, I mean, it can be quite bad. You know, we discussed so many times here. You know, I don't have more and nothing else to add. I mean, we discussed this so many times that I think it's it is possible to do this ID, but as long as it prescribes the government to do just only what is supposed to do with it, nothing else. You know.
I think the other thing, and it comes back to the. You know, there's what a government could do with it. There's also what bad actors could do with it. If you've suddenly got a passkey that gives access across a range of services, capabilities, and everything, and that key is compromised, it's like having a master key at a hotel. All of a sudden, it gives you access to all sorts of things. So for a criminal enterprise, it must be very attractive to no longer need multiple things in order to get into systems, because once we get that one key, you know, we get, for example, your wallet, your online wallet, or your digital identity, and if we get that, we can then plug into a whole range of things. That's
why in Portugal you have a card. You can access your services online as well, not just going to the citizen shop. Yeah. And do all of the stuff there, but you can do it online. You need to get the reader, of course. And the card has the same chip that your credit card has. And if somebody picks it up, they won't be able to access your services. because only you know the password. Yeah, so it is quite good. It's how the implementation is always the key thing, isn't it? So it's safe. Yeah, it depends really how it's done. The only problem I have with it is, is what a government can do if it's not prescribed just to do a specific thing. Yeah, the ID card is only for X, Y, and Z, and that's it. And nothing else. And then I think we're in a good place. I'm in favor of it if it's done in that way. If it's not done in that way, then of course not. I mean, it can have all the problems that you guys have been talking about,
Yeah. And Elena, I think the other thing as well, you actually hit on a really good point. It won't affect most people, probably. But if you've suddenly got a major compromise of a system like that, it suddenly affects everybody. And that's where you've got the whole thing that in the UK, we've got the concept of what's known as national critical infrastructure. So these are things that have an extra layer of security around them. So things like pipelines down the UK carrying fuel, gas supply, electricity, mobile phones.
Passports.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of any the passports database having ever been leaked or compromised. Have you? I don't remember. So there are certain things. There are certain things that are properly protected.
I've never heard of UK passports being compromised. I think the Aadhaar project in India, there were some breaches on that at some point. So there's certainly the capability around
implementation. It's like you said, when you define something as critical infrastructure for your country, and it is. I mean, imagine a database of passports being leaked, gosh, or being hacked. It's very well protected, and I think most European countries protect that well.
Yeah.
So it will be the same for the ID card. It will follow the same thing. We go back to discussion is how they actually implement, and what are the rules for that.
JT,
that's the problem.
Let me correct you. There has been several leaks where they've found thousands of passport scans of British citizens and tax documents. Also, in Portugal, they've had ID cards since 1911, so it's over a century. And the current ID cards are not tied to your bank account. They're only to social services in the government.
Yeah, they're not.
Let's stay with facts.
Yeah, but I said government. I didn't say bank. Yeah, I said all government services. Yeah,
No,
that's what Portugal does. I didn't say bank account. Go and replay back the conversation.
All right.
I said government services. Yeah.
But let's agree that there's a range of things and potentially.
But yeah, the UK has been compromised on its passport database several times.
Database or scans of passports that somebody leaked. That's different.
I've got no idea.
Okay, that's very different. Yeah.
But again, it comes back to the scope of it, doesn't it? Yeah. Anyway, moving swiftly on before we get on to that. Being ever the diplomat. Anything else happening in the blockchain, DLT, crypto, or metaverse world at the moment? Anyone had any news? Anything happening?
Is the metaverse still a thing?
Well, we've got a resident expert here with Elena. She should be telling us what's going on.
It's still a thing within a narrow community.
Very quiet.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
The thing that I saw was that guy that posted in one of the groups that Tim Draper token that launched for the Draper TV.
Did that turn out to be real then?
Yeah, it turned out to be real, and it went like 40 million or 40-something million market cap. Then it came down, it's stabilizing. And just over the weekend, just over 2 days. So that's very interesting, that he actually chose a Pump.Fun platform, the video streaming, to actually stream as well the Draper TV streams. Yeah.
And just to put it into the context of those who don't know who Tim Draper is, from my recollection, he was a traditional financial services guy who got crypto. He understood
No,
the
no, no.
benefits.
Investor from Silicon Valley invested
Yeah.
in Tesla, SpaceX,
He goes back
Twitter.
Tim Draper goes back a long way.
Yeah, his father wasn't it? Was a VC already.
$6 billion loan, government-backed loan, to start investing in small businesses.
And his father was already an investor, if I recall well.
Yes.
So there's a tradition there. So he invested in he even invested in Baidu in China. I mean, he has an incredible track record. And he was the guy that bought those 30,000 bitcoins from the American government back in 2014. Was the first sale that the US government did. And he was the guy that won that auction. He bought 30,000 bitcoins from them. So he is very well known in crypto and in Bitcoin, but as well in investment. So that was very, like, I don't know what's the right word, but very, very surprising that he did that launch of the token. Some people are discussing now that they're going to announce a few things this week. So who knows? But it's good to see something new because the market was kind of a really bad. It still is, And then a guy launches launches a token like this. It's quite good to see things happening,
Yeah. Anything else happened in the last few weeks then?
Well,
Apart
yes.
from the market dropping 10%.
10%. In some cases, was a lot.
Yeah.
There was that Atom token dropped from, I think it was $3.80 to 0.001 on that Friday crash. It was really fast. It was almost went to zero. So I don't know what happened with that. But what I've seen lately was a lot of the, not a lot, quite a bit actually, of some of the top guys that are known in the markets to come and say, hey, it's over, the cycle is over, Bitcoin is going to crash, it's doomsday. What that means to me is they all sold, and they are now pushing everyone to get scared so that the market crashes again and the cycle is finished so they can buy low again. But I think this time they're going to be surprised, because I'm a true believer this is a super cycle and it's going to continue, until 2028, until Trump is gone, I think it will continue. That's my personal view.
We shall see.
I mean, even that guy, the Tate guy, what's his name? Andrew Tate, is it? Was saying. Yeah, somebody was posting something that, oh yes, Bitcoin's gonna go to $26,000 or whatever. Even you see, even all of that type of guys are coming out and say, yeah, it's gonna crash. I doubt it. I truly doubt it.
It's where again I take limited interest in crypto prices because that's not about innovation. It's not about exploration of ideas and that kind of thing. It's just people gambling, and there's nothing wrong with gambling, but it's not innovative use of technology. It's not coming up with new ideas or new ways of doing things or creating new capabilities. It's just people seeing the numbers go up and the numbers go down. And when it's a rising market, everyone thinks they're an expert. And when it drops a bit, it's market catastrophe, blood spilled on the streets, blah, blah, blah. And then those of us who've been in the space long enough have said, it's a 12% drop. I've seen that happen 4 or 5 times now. Welcome to crypto. It's not such a big
one
deal.
thing that happened as well was Asterdex, ASTER, Asterdex. It's a futures leverage, but it's a DEX. It's quite well supported, I think, from Binance. I think invested in them. So some heavyweights supporting. So it was on the mouth of everyone. Everyone's talking about the Asterdex and the Aster token and the usual stuff, But it seems to be pretty good, to be frank, So
My only general thought about crypto is that crypto for beginners is just a very efficient way of allowing people to lose money, or occasionally win. So we'll see. All right. It sounds like we're about the close of the session now, and we're coming on to the hour anyway. So thank you everyone for coming along today. An interesting conversation about digital ID and the impact and consequences. So have a great day, everybody.